First and foremost, I want to thank the members from the community who came out to speak on this critically important issue. Your comments, your feedback, your thoughts, your emails have been heartfelt and received by each and every one of us on this board. Secondly, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for calling this special meeting. I think it is another example of your leadership during very difficult times, to be very transparent, to be engaging, to be inclusive of this community, and to not turn a deaf ear or a blind eye to the voices, all voices regarding this very, very critical, important issue, and an issue that regretfully has sought to create unnecessary divisions within our community and within our district. Thirdly, I would like to thank Dr. Dotris for clarifying the essential elements regarding what these curriculum materials and textbooks are about. Regretfully, the narrative has been deduced to sex education. So although I appreciate much of the feedback in support of us adopting the materials, I did have some angst around the subject, because this, as you've heard from my colleagues, as you most importantly heard from the superintendent, this is not simply about sex education. This is much broader, much deeper, much more important than sex education. So Dr. Dotris, I want to thank you. And I heard my colleague just go through a list, Board Member Fraga went through a list of topics that are inclusive in these materials. So I want to thank you again, Madam Chair, for being courageous, being convicted, and being committed to a very transparent process and being receptive to the feedback on either side of this particular issue. Madam Chair, I know you're going to get to the essence, the fulcrum of the item, and I think it's critically important that you put in the recommend. I want to thank you to assess the potential impact to the district, denying the hearing officer's recommendation for the adoption of instructional materials, and to potentially design a plan of action to remediate any adverse impact. Just before we took the vote last week, after it was moved and seconded, I raised a question relative to would not accepting the recommendation of the hearing officer put the district in some issues of non-compliance. The answer was in the affirmative. And many of my colleagues were somewhat taken aback relative to what happened last year or in prior times, but I emphasize this notion and, quite frankly, this reality that I'm sure, Mr. Harvey, you can appreciate and all attorneys can appreciate. The word is called knowingly. Once you know, you have a heightened sense of responsibility, you have a heightened burden. The recommendation last week talked about the hearing officer. The hearing officer is not someone that Dr. Dotris selected arbitrarily. The hearing officer is James A. Robinson, a former school board attorney in Pinellas County and Alachua County, also former general counsel of the Florida Department of Education. He has presided over instructional materials public hearing in Seminole County. And although everyone is entitled to their own opinions, no one is entitled to their own facts. In his comments stated, the petitions reflect the heartfelt objections and concerns of petitioning parents and residents and may be addressed by parental opt-out pursuant to law and policy, existing law and policy. However, this objective, independent, legal expert with a track record said no evidence was presented to the hearing officer that the materials in question fall within the statutory criteria for objection set forth in sections 1006.31 parentheses 2 or 1006.40 parentheses 3/D. He basically said it followed the process, it was consistent with law, and the recommendation should be accepted moving forward. So I thought it was important for us to know who we're talking about when we're talking about a hearing officer, someone that had a track record relative to this particular issue. Through the chair, I do want to just kind of summarize by saying I looked at this from a number of vantage points. First and foremost, each of us is obligated to look at it from the vantage point as a policymaker. As a policymaker, it does comply with every provision in the law and related statutes. I've heard some people that said it does not. It does. Specifically, the Parental Bill of Rights Act. This is not even applicable to that because the Parental Bill of Rights Act speaks specifically to grades K through 3 on some particular topics of concern. These materials are for middle and high school. The Parental Bill of Rights also reinforces parental engagement, opt-out, etc. So first and foremost, I look at it as a policymaker. Secondly, I look at it as a parent of a school-aged child in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. So yes, it is personal. It is personal. A parent, a member who has relatives that have children that will be able to access this information or not. Access this information or not. Thirdly, I look at it based on my journey that started in 1985 as a product of this, or lack thereof. A former teenage father while a student in Miami Northwestern Senior High School. So it is personal for me. Not only a teenage father, but a teenage father of a daughter. Of a daughter. I look at it from the vantage point as later on a single father of a daughter. Thank God I had a choice of trusted educators, trusted counselors, a trusted curriculum, a trusted educational program that could talk about those sensitive issues that I may not have wanted to talk about with my daughter. That's my choice. Some parents rely on the public school system with respect to choice and rely on educators to be their voice on certain matters and certain issues. That is a parental choice. We can't pick and choose when parental choice is the election of the day. It cuts across all lines. So we can't defend some and deny others. I know parents that rely on these topics to be addressed. I know some. I was one. I was one. Fourthly, I was a principal in the beloved Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I was a teacher in middle school. These are salient areas for these materials. And I was a high school principal for 7 years. No one can tell me how important this information is for our young people on topics not just dealing with sexuality, but as a principal, we dealt with issues of human trafficking, of which my colleague, Dr. Dorothy Bendros-Mendengar, has been a staunch advocate to address this in particular areas in the urban core with our young ladies. Domestic violence, critical topics. Date rape, critical topics. Hygiene, critical topics. All of these topics are salient in these particular areas. So I looked at it from that vantage point. And last but not least, I look at it from the vantage point of a person. A person who was a principal that had an obligation to teach, to support, to embrace, to care for, and to love all students, no matter what their experiences, their choices, their backgrounds are. And that is not something that I learned in school. That is not something I learned in the university. That is something that I learned growing up as a relative of a gay individual, a gay brother, who I love and care about deeply. In any commentary that seeks to deride individuals based on who they are is inconsistent with the tenets, inconsistent with the principles, inconsistent with the policies and the paradigms of the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and are totally inconsistent with what we should be reflected of as not only citizens, but as human beings. So, Madam Chair, I thank you for allowing us to take a deeper dive, to assess, to remediate, and to potentially ensure that we provide an opportunity for all students and give all students in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools the world. Thank you.